I just want to say a few words about llms.txt files and how you might find them useful. Firstly, we have our documentation site at docs.zenml.io. I'm sure many of you are familiar with this. There's a bunch of sections which I'm sure you're used to. And llms.txt is basically a markdown formatted version of all of our docs or certain slices of our docs. Because we have quite a lot of docs, we split these files into different versions. So if you want the full shebang, llms.full.txt is the entire documentation code base. So you can see it has all of the how-to section, component guides, user guides, and so on. This is a huge chunk of context and a huge amount of tokens. So for most use cases, you probably won't want to be talking to or using this entire file. Generally speaking, the llms.txt file is the kind of starter version that is small enough to use in a query, which I'll show you in a second. Um, uh, if you want just to query like components, specific components, and this corresponds to the stack components section of our documentation, then use the component guide.txt. And if you just want to query the how-to guides, so this is the kind of the practical day-to-day coding stuff around how to what syntax to use in your pipeline and so on, how to define customized Docker builds and whatever, then use the how-to guides. But yeah, for most people, probably LLMs, the plain basic one is going to be the one you want to start with. Before I get into exactly how you can use llms.txt files, I actually wanted to highlight a feature that we have as part of our documentation, which maybe not all of you know, that would maybe make you not need to use these files. We have this Ask AI button in the bottom right-hand corner, and you can ask questions. It's kind of chat with your docs type feature. So you could ask, how do I have my step output a visualization as its output and have it displayed on the dashboard. Give me code. And so what this does is basically a RAG app powered by Run LLM, which is using the ZenML documentation and also the SDK docs. And it will usually give you pretty solid solid answers to most simple questions. And here it's going to give us how you could an example for how to do this in code with a matplotlib visualization. And it talks about the different kinds of visualizations that you can export, and it has a source for where you can learn more about that. So if you haven't used Run LLM and you have a question and you don't want to dig into a specific section and try and figure out whether we even write about this in our docs, this is definitely the first place to try. Okay, now I just wanted to showcase how you would use these llms.txt files within Cursor. I guess a lot of people use it. There are similar interfaces in VS Code. So let's say I was working on a particular step, and I know that the ZenML documentation has a really interesting guide about evaluation for LLM applications, and I just wanted to check with that. I've done an initial pass at like retrieval evaluation for retrieval for a RAG app, but I wanted to just check with the ZenML documentation. Obviously, I could cut this code and I could paste it together with the kind of copy paste of the documentation and dump it into Claude or something. But it's much nicer just to do this within Cursor, so I can just add the URL, or if I have it in my clipboard, I can just paste it. I add a link and I say, how does my code look with reference to of am I doing it right? Or at so the only thing normally I have some instructions which normally it will write a design document first, so I wanted to avoid this. So actually, it's going to look at the code first, and then it's going to look at the documentation, which is inside the llms.txt, and give a bunch of advice. Potentially, you can apply this to your code. It'll give a whole bunch of explanation. Yeah, so it was just using Gemini 2.0 because it is out recently. Yeah, so this just shows you how you can use it within Cursor to use these llms.txt files. The full version of our llms.txt file is actually pretty huge. It's definitely larger than the context that you can pass into Claude or OpenAI, for example. It's just too big. So the only way, if you want to use it, is basically to use one of the Gemini models. Luckily, there's a whole bunch of these, and they're very good. So let's say we have the URL, and if we go into Vertex Studio, you can actually select, you can upload by URL, and then it's a text file. It already got that. We can insert it there, and we can say what's the best way to do evals for material with LLMs, and I'm using uh, yeah, so you can ask a question. It has the context there. Little tip: if you use the experimental models, it's free. So if you use some of the non-experimental models, you could end up paying quite a lot of money since there's a huge amount of context. But if you use the experimental ones, obviously Google is logging and tracking how you use this to make them better. And then we can send this off. It's going to tell us in a second how many tokens were involved in that request. I'm just going to pause this while it goes away and thinks. And you can actually see now that it's like 637,000 tokens. So we're edging up towards the 1 million token mark, which, yeah, only the Geminis are really good at this. And because we're using Flash, it's thought about this, and it's has a good speed. It's generating a bunch of yeah responses based on the documentation, re-ranking. There's a lot of output coming out. But anyway, now you know how to use the llms.txt together with Vertex for this LLMs full file. Now, finally, I just wanted to showcase how you can use our llms.txt files together with NotebookLM, which is a service provided by Google. So I have actually gone ahead and added in the LLM's full TXT file. You can just add sources and you add a link with a website, and then you paste in the URL and it will ingest it. You can see it's ingested it now. And this is basically your own little RAG app that you can then ask queries. So I can ask, how do I use Comet ML with ZenML? And the answers will be very quick and snappy. We can just make this go away. I'm not sure what model it's using underneath. I think it's one of the Flash models, but you can see it gives you a little overview, just like the Run LLM integration on the ZenML. If you're into audio, you can create a little custom podcast. I'm interested mainly in the Comet ML integration with ZenML. And you can say generate, and it will go ahead and generate a little podcast version of the ZenML docs that relate to the Comet ML integration. So yeah, these are just a bunch of different ways that you can use these llms.txt files in your everyday. I hope you found this useful.